photos and videos that are providing ample evidence to support this. Regardless, there are some in the community who do not want to talk about this and are doing everything which is humanly possible to keep you from discovering the truth. One of the ways in which they have tried to hide this is through the continuous use of chemtrails. If you spend any time in the outdoors, especially in areas that are heavily populated, you will see the trails zigzag across the horizon prior to sunset or just before sunrise. The spraying of our atmosphere will continue as long as the vast majority of us have our faces glued to our cell phones or a television screen, or for as long as the mainstream media keeps it under wraps. It doesn't matter what we call this thing, a second sun, a brown dwarf star, Nibiru, the red or blue Kachina of Hopi prophecy. It just doesn't matter because it is there. They are attempting to keep it hiding from view. I know this because I have seen it firsthand. They spray chemtrails early in the morning and again in the evening. Not every day, but when it is needed. They even make an X to mark the spot. Whatever has entered into our existence, its presence is being felt across the solar system. What it will do and when it will make its presence known is a matter of interpretation. But it must be something extraordinary, otherwise the people in authority wouldn't be going to such extremes to keep its presence hidden for so many years. So, my friends, keep your eyes open and focused on your surroundings. Here is something very interesting that I just recently discovered about Nibiru, which is known in ancient literature as the planet of the crossing. It is now apparent that Nibiru is no longer a theory. Scientists and educators across the globe have come to the conclusion that its existence is real, and that it poses concerns for the inhabitants of planet Earth. This may seem whimsical to some of you, especially those who cannot grasp the concept of a Planet X. But for a number of years now, there have been a series of subtle hints given to the public, warning them of what is to come. This has been accomplished through means of Hollywood productions, commercials, and television documentaries. Now it seems even cartoons are providing an outlet for informing people. Most of you may be familiar with the cartoon series called Scooby-Doo. It's been in syndication for a long time. Well, as you will see in this video clip, the producers of this animated show have something to tell the world. Take a look.
Something's been bugging me about our little underwater escapade.
There's a lot about that adventure I wish we could forget.
Amen to that.
But the weirdest part of all was what the late Abigail Gluck whispered.
Like I'll say, a crazy mummified corpse whispering Nibiru is creepy times 10.
It gets creepier. I googled it and found a lot. Namely this. Nibiru is a planet listed in the writings of Zecharia Sitchin, particularly his book The 12th Planet. According to Sitchin's interpretation of Babylonian religious texts, a giant planet called Nibiru passes by Earth every 3,600 years and allows its sentient inhabitants to interact with humanity. These beings, which Sitchin identified with the Anunnaki of Sumerian myth, would become humanity's first gods. My favorite internet encyclopedia says there's supposed to be a collision. The Nibiru collision is a disastrous encounter between the Earth and a large planetary object. Believers in this doomsday event usually refer to this object as Planet X, or Nibiru.
The doomsday event?
Regardless of the intent of the producers, there is certainly a story to convey here. Although this is a cartoon watched by millions of children around the world, there appears to be a serious overtone incorporated into the animated episode. Down in Antarctica, there is another story waiting to be told. All of a sudden, government officials, military brass, even predominant members of the world's religions are going there. But why? What is so important that requires their immediate attention and concern? There is even some speculation that people are being evacuated. If this should prove to be true, then something very disconcerting is taking place on the frozen continent. But there is one thing that is a certainty that has significant implications. The crack in the Larsen C ice shelf continues to grow and expand. There are now only 10 miles of ice that separate this from the open sea. This is not the first time that Antarctica has been on the verge of losing a significant portion of its ice sheet. But the Larsen C ice collapse will most likely change the landscape of the continent. It will allow the glacial ice to enter the ocean faster and accelerate the pace of sea level rise. This is because Larsen C is 10 times bigger than its nearby ice shelf, and therefore will have a more devastating impact on Earth's ecological balance. As you know, Skywatch Media has been posting a series of images and video clips captured by skywatchers from all over the world. They are posted on our Facebook page, which was created primarily for this purpose. Keeping you up to date is very important, so what I would like to do in my upcoming presentations is to include a few images and videos that were posted on our Facebook page that you may not have had an opportunity to view yet. So let's take a look at what is happening at this time. The photo captures from Kent, England are absolutely amazing in that the individual who was photographing the sun over Magat Beach had no idea what he had captured. And he sent these images to a friend who is an astronomical observer for his analysis, and they were then published to our Facebook page for review. There is something that is important to emphasize with these captures that disputes anything that a debunker may throw at you regarding their authenticity. And that has to do with the criteria for labeling an object as a lens flare. And this is what you need to know. Lens flares do not reflect as an object in a water landscape. As you can see in this image, the second sun, Nemesis, whatever this may be, is clearly reflecting in the water. A lens flare cannot do that because it does not exist. It is an illusion of the camera lens. Furthermore, this was photographed in the outdoors, so there were no obstructions that could cause a double reflection of the sun. Now, if we go to the FAA webcam capture from Alaska of the red planet, or the red dwarf star as it may actually be, not only is this object rotating, suggesting that it is in fact in orbit around our sun, but incredibly the object is captured behind the cloud formations and is even visible behind an aerospray trail. Now, have you ever heard of a lens flare that can do that? I haven't. It just isn't physically possible for that to occur. The camera does not have that capability. So what we have here are genuine captures of an incoming system.
Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and today's broadcast is very unusual. We're going to be discussing several things in our news broadcast today that clearly are, in some people's opinions, they are conspiracy theories. In other people's opinions, these things are really real. These things are happening on the earth. But we're also going to be looking at this from a prophetic standpoint, something that I discovered recently written in the book of Enoch, a book that, well, in some circles of Christianity and in Judaism, that the book of Enoch is not part of the Bible, but yet it's clearly part of the Ethiopic scriptures. It was even part of the Qumran community, where there's been many fragments, including an incomplete scroll of the book of Enoch that was discovered. So the Jewish people did accept the book of Enoch as an authoritative biblical scripture at one time, and in many Bibles it still is there, including even the Et Sefer that Dr. Stephen Pidgeon has put out as well, where he put this book back in the Bible. So we're going to be looking at some things from there, and we're going to even be looking at some articles that have been considered well, some might say it's fake news, some might say it's satire. Regardless of the case, there may be some very truth to it, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about these things. Antarctica has really become a major subject in recent, well, in fact, in the last year, even more so. There's been every kind of conspiracy theory that it is a place for a massive alien base. This is where aliens go at. We know of the one of the former military officers, Byrd, who fought a conflict near Antarctica and lost a lot of men, claiming that there were flying discs, flying saucers coming out of the Antarctica, and just there's all kinds of evidence that is legitimate evidence that clearly seems to show that the Antarctica is certainly a base of some sort. The Germans also, under Adolf Hitler, had a base down at Antarctica. There's all kinds of things that are going on in this region of the world, and this year, or actually last year, when the election, John Kerry himself disappeared down to the Antarctica during the very day of election. But what was really strange is that when John Kerry went down there, he goes to New Zealand right afterwards, and there was a massive earthquake inside of New Zealand. I'm going to share with you, you can see some of the images here on this article here from the New York Times. They'll show you some of the images of the earthquake itself. 7.8 magnitude earthquake. The earthquake was very, very shallow, and in one article that we saw that would probably be considered satire, that they have written and stated that the reason why the earthquake happened was because John Kerry did a last-ditch effort and went down to Antarctica to try to meet with the, well, as they put it there, he was meeting with the Guardians. And the Guardians had rejected his plea to put Hillary Clinton in the White House. Instead, Donald Trump would become the next president of the United States. Now, I realize that does. It sounds so far-fetched, sounds so crazy, in fact, to even think of that. And then, of course, they said that the earthquake at New Zealand, where he went immediately after the Antarctica visit, was a warning to him not to come back again. Well, that's what they also said in the article. Those of you that remember, here is a picture here of the Patriarch Kirill. Patriarch Kirill is also the head of the Eastern Orthodox Church, who went also to Antarctica on a very unexpected trip after he met with Pope Francis in Cuba. And Pope Francis gave him a secret document. Never was revealed exactly what was in the document, but it was the first time the two leaders of the both East and Western Orthodox churches had met together to try to mend their relationship. He goes to South America afterwards, and then the unexpected trip to Antarctica. Well, the question is, why did he go to Antarctica? Well, in one article here, the Ark of Gabriel Antarctica, Russia, and the Apocalypse, speaks about how that the Russian government had actually moved a mysterious ark that was discovered at Mecca underneath the ground there and was brought out. Many people died in the process, according to the article's claim here, and that Russia did a special movement of this ark down to Antarctica. Now, again, whether we would say this is just a bunch of garbage or if it's really true or not, I'll just leave that up to you. But maybe what I'm going to share with you in a few minutes might weigh in on your thinking. So I do ask you, just kind of bear with me a little bit here while we discuss these things here. Anyway, at Mecca, if you remember, I believe it was last year, there was a quote-unquote stampede. And the news reported that some 700, in one case 717 people were killed in this stampede. This is something that has never happened before at Mecca, and actually we found out later that it was 2,000 people were killed there in Mecca. And an apparent stampede that killed all of these people. Well, not according to some of the articles there. In fact, as you can see this crane here that is toppled, that what was actually going on at Mecca was an excavation of this strange ark called the Ark of Gabriel, that according to the article here, this was something that Muhammad had said, had prophesied about. And this was buried here beneath this very place, and they were working on trying to bring it out, and some type of plasma release was done, and it caused the death of all these people. Again, is this just conspiracy theories? Is it fabricated? Who really knows? But one thing that is a fact, though, is there was a Russian ship, a scientific ship, headed to Antarctica, and that ship did stop at the port there in Saudi Arabia, supposedly to take on supplies. Well, as you know, Saudi Arabia is not necessarily the greatest friend of Russia, but they did it anyway, right? So then, after that, the ship goes to South Africa and then on to Antarctica. So they did stop and pick something up in Saudi Arabia. So maybe the article has got some truth in it after all. And then right after this ship goes to Antarctica, this is when Kirill suddenly goes down there to visit the one and only Eastern Orthodox Church at the Antarctica. So just too many strange things are happening. And a lot of people just write it off as conspiracy theories, you know, these things about aliens and you know, all this stuff going on in Antarctica. This is just a bunch of nonsense to begin with. Well, you know, I always I looked at these things and I think, wow, that's pretty interesting. I will tell you though, this article here that you're seeing now in English, this article did appear in the mainstream Russian media as well. We did a report on this back months ago, and I was trying to find the actual report I did on it. Could not find it to save my life there. But I wanted to share that with you, and if you look back, maybe you can find it yourself. But when we did the report on this, we used Russian media, mainstream Russian media, that does not look at this as being just a fabrication. They actually reported it as real news, and that yes, indeed, Russia did do a secret mission down to the Antarctica and had taken a thing called the Ark of Gabriel. So there is a Russian news source out there that does not look at this as some kind of conspiracy. And it went much deeper than what this article goes into it. We shared that with you once before. But then something caught my attention the other day. As you can see on your screen now, this is the book of Enoch. I was reading in the first book of Enoch, chapter 18. And this is where the angel Uriel is taking Enoch and showing him some very interesting things. And I want to share with you some of the words that I read here in Enoch, and then you'll see why it became very interesting to me. If we go down to, say, verse 4 and begin there, it says, "And I saw the winds which turned the sky and caused the disk of the sun and all the stars to set. And I saw the winds on the earth which support the clouds. And I saw the path of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of heaven above. And I went towards the south." Okay, so he goes to the end of the earth. And he speaks about going towards the south. And it was burning day and night, where there were 7 mountains of precious stones, and 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. Now, I begin to think about this. He's talking about 7 mountains, but 3 go to the east and 3 go to the south, and he's talking about going towards the south. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, and he's talking about it being that it burns day and night. It was burning day and night. In other words, the sun is not setting. And I'm thinking to myself, well, the South Pole, that describes the South Pole like no other place on Earth. The sun just doesn't really ever set. It's always daylight. And so it really caught my attention. But then he mentioned about the 7 mountains. And of course he talks about the stones, etc. But then he says east and 3 go to the south. Well, that really got my attention. So I thought to myself, okay, is there a place down at the Antarctica that would kind of match this type of description? Well, oddly enough, there is. It's Mount Vincent. Now, you have to keep in mind what you're looking at here on your screen. You have Mount Vincent right here. It is called the Seven Summit. There are 3 going south. Now, you would say these are 3 to the west. It's actually described as southeast and southwest. But keeping in mind, when Enoch went here, the earth had not been tilted off its axis. So therefore, north and south, east and west was a bit different, right? And if you take and tilt the earth back the way it would have been, this will go just like that. And then you would have the 3 peaks, as it speaks about here, and we have the summit here, 3 peaks here. Those would go down to the south, just as he describes, and these here, the 3, would go to the east, just as he describes there. The 7 mountains, the 7 summits, and 3 to the east and 3 to the south. That really began to make sense. But the words here in Enoch get a little bit more strange, though. And as I read on, it says, and those towards the east were of colored of stone and was of pearl, and one of a healing stone, and those towards the south of a red stone. And the middle one reached to heaven like the throne of the Lord, and stibium, and the top of the throne was a sapphire. And I saw a burning fire, and what was in all the mountains. Now, keeping in mind, the middle one was the tall one. And of course, at Mount Vincent, that's exactly the way it is. Mount Vincent is the tallest mountain. Now, I can't say that this is conclusively correct. I'm putting this here before you as a conjecture, something for you to think about, just something that I find very fascinating in line with all these anomalies that are happening at Antarctica, all the weird things that are going on. John Kerry, I mean, gosh, he did more than 1 visit down to the Antarctica here. Why? What's going on? Now, when I first looked at this, I'm thinking Planet X. They're going down there because they can see Planet X coming. All right? And maybe that has something to do with it as well. But what about some other things? I'm going to share with you some very serious things also that are going on down there that have been claimed by former military officers. Okay, so just hold on for a second here. It says, and I saw a place there beyond the great earth. There the waters gathered together, and I saw a deep chasm of the earth with pillars of heavenly fire, and saw among them fiery pillars of heaven, which were falling as regards both height and depth. They were immeasurable. And beyond this chasm, I saw a place, and it had neither the sky above it, nor the foundation of earth below it, and there was no water on it, and no birds, but it was a desert place. Now, I'm sure now when you read this part here, well, that throws that out. Must have been out in Saudi Arabia somewhere. Maybe not. Maybe not, guys. Let's take a look at something else here that's very, very interesting. All right, let's go actually to the 7summits.com website. And this is about Antarctica, and it's about Mount Vincent, and it talks about it being the tallest mountain, etc. Let me read to you the Antarctica facts, though. Besides the mountain summit, if you go down here to say about right up under the blue right here on your screen, the snowfall in Antarctica is so minimal that the continent has been called the world's coldest desert. The interior receives less than 3 centimeters, in other words, less than 1 inch of precipitation a year. making it the driest continent on Earth. The Antarctic dry valleys in Victoria Land are among the driest places on Earth. Some scientists believe that no rain has fallen there for 2 million years. Astronauts have visited the dry valleys because of their similarity to lunar landscapes. Isn't that interesting? They call it the coldest desert on Earth. Well, maybe Enoch has got something when he said it was a desert. All right? As he called it, there was no water on it and no birds, but it was a desert place. Well, there are no birds. There are no penguins when you get that deep into Antarctica. There's just no life at all.